Welcome in to Check the Mic. Steve Palazzolo, Sam Monson. We're live on YouTube. It's our Thursday show. Today, talking all things cornerbacks. Our own takes only here, Sam. How you doing, buddy?
Doing well. How about you, Steven?
Doing great. We're going to rank all the cornerbacks. We've ranked running backs, receivers, edge rushers to this point. We got corner. This is my I always enjoy your cornerback takes, Sam. Of all the takes that you have, I like your corner takes.
I told you this off air, but I'm going to be, there's a little more pep in the step this morning because I'm like 5 coffee shots deep into the day. So later there'll be a fairly seismic caffeine crash, I would imagine. But for now, we're a little bit wired.
You needed that Tuesday on my second round mock. Not going to lie, you weren't feeling it. You weren't ready. Felt like I was dragging you across the finish line for my second round mock there.
Well, this is apparently, we've now discovered the number of shots required for me to get suitably caffeinated to handle it.
So now my question is, next week when we're live, by the way, we will be live Thursday night during the draft, Friday night during the draft. How do you pace yourself during that day? We will not have a show that morning, right? So you'll have your usual morning coffee. Now you have to fight the balance of hydration's important, caffeine's important, and the fewest number of bathroom breaks possible, also important. That is the triangle of terror that you fight when you're on air 7 or 8 hours in a row.
Well, one way of fighting that is just, shot form as opposed to large coffees, right? So you just have an endless row of espressos as opposed to, full coffees.
Good strategy. All right. So I'm going to get the espressos going about 6:30 next Thursday. We're going to be live at 7. I've predicted Aaron Rodgers makes some sort of retirement and or Steelers decision at about 7:30 Thursday night, right before round 1, right? Just to, breaking news from Schefter. Aaron Rodgers has made a decision now that the draft has started. So we'll see next week. But yeah, next Thursday we'll be live, and hope you'll join us. Hope you subscribe and make sure that you're with us all weekend during the draft. Other stuff that we need to just take care of at the top. Thanks to Dane Brugler for joining the show yesterday. Always enjoy our discussions with Dane, and always enjoy our discussions with the fans through email. And we got a whole bunch of draft submissions, bet submissions. We had a few addendums come through, Sam, people that we called out, for lack of a better term. We asked for a little bit more aggressiveness, boldness on the show. We had some addendums, so we can we'll hit those sometime between now and next Thursday, and any new bets that come in. But yeah, if you have any others, check the mic at the33team.com. Appreciate all of the interaction there. Before we get into the cornerbacks, mug check for everybody. Everybody hold up your mugs. What do you have? What is this now? This is new.
It's a grumpy mug. By the way, it's also huge. Like, it's like the size of my head.
You have a different size mug every day. I've got my Yeti, my usual, but yeah, grumpy is it's fitting for you, though. It would have been better on a day that you didn't have 5 shots of espresso in you.
I mean, I can still be grumpy. I'm just caffeinated and grumpy.
Just caffeinated and grumpy. Great. Anything else you want to touch on here before we go?
No, let's go. Let's go.
All right. Cornerback rankings. As always, you went into a bunker. I went into a bunker. We did it on our own rankings, and probably came back to the same conclusions. I'll say this about the quarterback class. If you just look at the consensus board at NFLmockdraftdatabase.com, there are 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 cornerbacks in the top 46 and 9 in the top 73. Then there's a drop off 10 in the top 91, right? So there's and then there's a bunch, in the low hundreds. So it is like a top 8 to 12 heavy cornerback class for the consensus, right? That's just where we are. It's other positions like edge rush. We talked about Dane has 17 edges in his top 100. Consensus board is similar. Cornerbacks a little bit more top heavy when we talk about first and second rounders in this class.
Yeah, and it felt like that's where the teardrop was. Like, I thought it was a 9, and then basically the one that I thought the ranking was sort of one thing, but the names for the top 9 guys, I think, effectively almost picked themselves. And then it's like, who do you want to put in there as your 10th corner? That's where I thought the teardrop was. And then I think the other teardrop is right at the top, where there's a couple of guys that you want at the sharp end. And then it gets into when's the next group, which one is your favorite? And that's where I think you're picking style, you're picking scheme, fit. It's, we have this conversation every year, the sort of foolishness almost of ranking in abstract terms these corners that don't belong in the same scheme or even necessarily the same position together feels a little silly. Like I thought about it last night. I was like, we'll just do it as normal. But like, I kind of wanted to give a ranking of like, here's the top 5 for a man cover scheme. Here's the top 5 for a zone scheme. Here's the top 5 that play a different position, a sort of slot role or whatever. It's every year you sort of feel really strange about ranking these guys because like, depending on your scheme, your board will look radically different from this. Like, this is not a one size fits all thing. This is a depends on what you're looking for thing.
All right, Sam, I'm going to let you, as we've done previously, I'm going to let you list your top 5. I'm also going to take a chance here and try to fix my hardwired internet. I'm going to unplug and just go on Wi-Fi, see if that's any better for any reason. So we'll give it to you to go through the top. Nothing will go wrong here whatsoever. I'm waiting for the okay from either Will or Ben here to do that. And so if we could go, let's go full screen on you, and you give us your top 5, and then I'll react accordingly.
Okay.
That's me.
That's full screen on Steve. It's almost. We're getting there. You had a 50-50 shot.
We're just having fun here.
All right, there we go. Okay. My number 1 cornerback in this draft is Travis Hunter, the Colorado two-way superstar. I think it's closer than it is at wide receiver. I think he's clear wide receiver 1. I think it's closer in cornerback to the group, but I do think he's still cornerback 1 as well. We'll get into why later, but I think sick ball skills, insane burst, that kind of thing. Number 2, I think is close. You could go in a couple of different directions depending on what you're looking for. I ended up going with Jahdae Barron from Texas. I'm a little bit iffy on what exactly to call him. I'm not 100% sure he is an outside corner for everybody, but I think he ends up being my number 2 cornerback in the group. Number 3 corner, this one again, I debated, but I think this is Will Johnson from Michigan. Incredibly smooth mover. The testing is going to be a little bit of a concern. The fact that he basically didn't do a bunch of it. And the stuff that he did do is just the movement drills where he does look smooth. Number 4, number 4 corner is Trey Amos, the Ole Miss corner. And then number 5, I ended up going with Maxwell Hairston, the Kentucky cornerback who blew up the combine with the crazy 4.2 40 time. Also was at the Senior Bowl, put some incredible tape out there as well. So that's my top 5. Travis Hunter, Jahdae Barron, Will Johnson, Trey Amos, and then Maxwell Hairston.
All right. I caught all that. I'm back. Hopefully it's a little bit better here. We'll see how it goes. Okay, mine's slightly different here. I'll give you my top 5, and then we'll go through your 5 as we go. Am I still blurry? Travis Hunter, number 1. So I agree with you there. I went Will Johnson from Michigan, number 2. I went Jahdae Barron, number 3 instead. So we have the same top 3. So 4 and 5 are both different here. I went Shavon Revel as 4 from East Carolina. I am going to continue to pound the table for Shavon. I think he's just got incredible potential. I think I went on potential on a couple players here. I regret one of the players. You put Hairston at 5. I have him down at 9. And so I have him low, and I might immediately regret that. I might want to put him at 6 or 7 if I had to redo it. But I have him lower. And then Revel's my 4. Benjamin Morrison is my 5. And so I don't know if I just bought into some serious priors with Revel and Morrison before their injuries and kind of dismissed some of their injury history there. But I have them at 4 and 5. And we can go back through your list here if we want.
Okay. Yeah. Well, and both guys are in my top 10. So again, we have pretty much the same top 10s. One name I think is different apparently, but I think there's some good discussions because all these guys, it's not quite like the edge group where there's like a glaring red flag that terrifies you about almost all of the top guys. It's just like which one scares you the least. But I think there are some interesting differences and discussions to be had from this group.
All right, let's start with Travis Hunter. Cornerback 1 for both of us, wide receiver 1 for both of us. And we did that in isolation, right? This is if he's just a corner, if he's just a receiver. What do you love about Travis Hunter?
Yeah, so, okay, we have the same conversation that we had for wide receiver in terms of I still believe that whatever you're viewing from him in terms of tape, watching either wide receiver or corner, I don't think that's 100% of what you could get if you shrunk down the two-way responsibilities to some degree. Now, I don't know if that's going to happen, right? Suddenly, Travis Hunter's out of here saying, "Man, I want to play both ways still. If a team told me I couldn't do that, I'd rather quit." Right now, maybe that's hyperbole, whatever. But it's also, there were reports, I forget where I was reading it, that was saying, look, every team seems to be in on you letting him play both ways. Now, obviously, there's degrees of that, right? There's letting them play both ways the way Marcus Jones plays both ways, where like we have 3 snaps for you this game on offense. And there's what he was doing in Colorado, which is playing, 100+ snaps a game across both sides of the ball. So it's TBD what you're going to get from him in terms of a two-way athlete at the next level. But I do believe that it hampered him to some degree. And I think that those, let's call them fatigue plays, I think those fatigue plays showed up more at cornerback than they did at wide receiver, right? Because, if you're tired at wide receiver, you can kind of hide it. You can loaf through a route. It doesn't really matter. If you're tired at cornerback, you give up separation, and that's a problem. So I do think that his fatigue play showed up a bit at corner, but the athleticism, the quick twitch, like that showed up. His burst at corner is nutty. Like it might be the best closing burst that I've seen from a corner. I don't know since when, like basically since doing this at all. His burst is so silly that it makes everybody else's burst look ridiculous. Like if you watch him first and then go and watch any other corner, the other corner looks like they're running in quicksand relative to Travis Hunter when he plants his foot and goes, when he triggers on the ball. And when the ball's in the air, he's a wide receiver, like an elite wide receiver. Not, there are other corners who have, experience playing wide receiver, but generally speaking, they got moved to corner because they're not very good at receiver. It's still a plus, right? It's like a bad wide receiver generally has pretty good hands relative to cornerbacks. But it's not like, you're not putting an elite wide receiver there in terms of ball skills. Hunter's an elite wide receiver in terms of ball skills playing corner. So when the ball's in the air, he's elite.
Let's add some context to that, right? Richard Sherman was a wide receiver conversion, and it was like he's got some of the best ball skills in the NFL in the length and size. That was why it was so tough to throw the ball on him. Tariq Woolen, also of the Seahawks, was a bad wide receiver, couldn't catch the ball, and he converts to corner and has some of the best ball skills in the NFL. So Hunter could literally have the best ball skills we've seen in the last 20 years for any corner. And that's not a crazy exaggeration because he has great wide receiver ball skills as well. So that is one thing that puts him in a special category, I think, at corner.
Yeah.
Carry on.
It does. Like they are legit plus skills at that position that rare ball skills for a cornerback. And it's not just like ball skills, ability to catch, ability to adjust. Once he understands the route, once he reads what's happening, he turns into the wide receiver. Like you see that every now and again with corners where, he ran the route for the receiver. Like Hunter's deliberately doing it. Once he understands what the route is that he's covering, he actually becomes the wide receiver on the play and is sort of going out of his way, not just to beat the receiver there, but to like make a play on the ball. Like that, again, rare ability that not many corners have ever had because of those wide receiver skills. I thought he does, for a guy that's like, what is he, 6 foot, 6'1", 180 pounds, something like that. So he's kind of long and pretty lean, pretty thin. For someone that doesn't look, like a heavyweight, he does the dirty work, I think, pretty well. Like he's good against the run. He sifts through the trash on screens. He fights his way through contact. He'll blow up the short stuff underneath. I thought he does the short kind of play an awful lot better than I would have expected for a guy that, number one, is tired most of the time. Number two is sort of long, thin, and rangy. I thought that part was a real plus to his game.
Yeah, our friend of the show, Jahdae Barron, I heard him breaking, Rondé's a Hall of Famer, former slot with the Bucks, and I heard him break down Travis Hunter and his game, and he had concerns about his tackling. And part of it was just willingness to tackle, almost describing him like Dion. Like, I don't know if he was told to kind of back off and don't get hurt. And look, there's some plays, right? I've seen Will Johnson plays making the rounds. Like, you don't want this guy, can't tackle. You could find 5 or 6 Travis Hunter plays where I think, you could state that case, right? And I don't know if we've talked about this quickly off air. I don't know if Rondé is coming at this from what happens with a lot of players, Sam, is they come at it from, here's how I played, here's my style, and if things aren't up to my standard, that, I have to call that out. It's below my standard. Well, Rondé is one of the better tackling corners of all time. He's like, and he's in a cover 2 scheme in Tampa where you have to play zone and you have to tackle, right? So it's like him, and it's Tyrann Mathieu and Antoine Winfield. Like, those are the style of players that Rondé fits into, and Hunter's just a different type of player. And so he was a little critical of, say, him and the tackler. Loves everything else about him, thinks he could be a top 3 corner, technique work, tidy up some stuff full-time. If he did that full-time, he's awesome, right? That was his concern. But I agree with you ultimately on Hunter's tape. The number of times where his lateral quickness shows up to help him blow up a screen, blow up a flat, save the game against Baylor with a forced fumble at the goal line. I keep coming back to that old, like, he's just a good football player. Like, he is just a good football player. And just the fact that he had to play wide receiver and corner, he wasn't able to put all the time in to refine his technique, right, to sit there in between series, to go through the game plan and everything. So much of this is just go out there and play football and play instinctually. And Rondé brought that up too. It's like sometimes he was playing coverages that didn't mesh with the rest of the defense. And it's like, that kind of makes sense, right? That kind of makes sense for Hunter. So imagine when he is doing this full time. And so that brings up the question, like Andrew Berry just came out today. They're the expected, landing spot for Travis Hunter, saying he's a wide receiver first, cornerback second. And most of the reason why we've always inverted it is because theoretically you need more time to dedicate to your technique, to game planning, at cornerback. And at receiver, you can kind of get away with just go out there, run a route, be an athlete. And you could definitely get away with doing that only for 25 snaps versus the inverse. So that's going to be really interesting in Cleveland if they're talking about him receiver first. But bottom line for me on Hunter, the ball skills you mentioned are incredible. What we always refer to as instincts, just general feel, he's outstanding at that. And, his very first game at Colorado, he's sitting there splitting 2 routes, and then they throw one in the red zone into the flat, and he breaks on it and picks it off. I mean, some of those plays are unreal. And so I think him, and I'll get to Will Johnson in a minute, I think he has potential to have 8 to 10 interceptions in a season, right? And usually when that happens in the NFL, Trayvon Diggs had 10 and then he had 5 the next year. Xavier Howard had 8+ one year. Like, we know that fluctuates. I'm just saying, in a given season where things break right, Hunter has that 8 to 10 interception, this dude's force and turnovers ability. That's his skill to me. Zone, eyes on the quarterback, just maybe take some chances here and there, but he's gonna force turnovers. And then we can talk about his man coverage, and 22% of his receiving yards allowed came against Stanford and Maynard a couple of years ago, and maybe he gets bodied by some bigger receivers, but man, he could be a turnover machine at the next level because of his ball skills and feel for zone coverage.
Yeah, I mean, it's strange because that Stanford tape was like, if all you saw was that, you would be terrified. Like, that was concerning. I mean, he got wrecked in that game multiple times. I mean, even outside of the plays that were made, there were a bunch of plays that Stanford missed where he got wrecked on them as well. Like, the numbers could have been worse than they were, and they were already terrible. And, the way, like, they were signature defeats. The last one was literally like, just got absolutely, little brothered at the catch point. Like, Maynard made the catch almost through him to win the ball to end the game. Like, absolute domination. But that does represent like a wild outlier for his baseline. Like, that's not what his tape looks like most of the time, right? And, so Sauce Gardner has been arguably the best cornerback in the NFL, basically since coming into the league. And then last year had some rough games and a bad season relative to him, right? So we know that cornerback has this wild fluctuation in play standards. the baseline, it's not stable the way it is for other positions. You can be good, you can be down. Even the best corners in the NFL, let alone college, can have those games where they get dominated, right? It doesn't normally happen, but it can happen. So, you have to acknowledge that the tape is there and say, okay, that at least flags up some concerning traits or concerning potential worries. But you also have to say it didn't happen regularly to him. In fact, it basically happened once to him. And most of the time, that's not what his tape looked like. So the lightweight thing is a little bit of a worry. You definitely look at him and say, can he hold up against these big-bodied elite X wide receivers at the NFL level? Maybe not consistently. To me, I'm less concerned about the size and the play strength. And I'm not necessarily concerned about the long speed, though I don't, we've talked before, right? This idea of sort of 3 stages of speed: instant get off, acceleration phase, and then top speed. I think he's probably elite at 2 of the 3. And I don't think he's bad at the 3rd. Like, he's not running a 4.6, right? Like, he's not bad. He might not run a 4.3, but I would imagine he's somewhere in the middle there, right? And that's fine. So I think his speed is functional, but I do think he trusts it a little bit too much. Like, I think he gives guys too much of a free release, too much space, and then actually can't get it back because he doesn't run a 4.2. He doesn't have Hairston's deep speed. So once he's given up that space and then it's like, it's actually going deep here, he's not able to drag that back with elite top end speed.
That's really quick, not to interrupt, but that's how I thought Deonte Banks played when he came out a couple of years ago. He ran in the 4.3s. I thought he was lackadaisical, say, with his technique, allowing receivers to stack him and then just out-athleted them to recover. So your point is Hunter can't afford to do that. And that might be what Rondé was getting at when it's like, hey, he's just kind of playing football without a ton of technique yet. Once that's tidied up, he'll be fine because he's such a good athlete to adjust to it.
And this is where it becomes a difficult projection for him, right? Because how much of that is if you're tired, that's the kind of thing that goes, right? Technique gets sloppy. You could look at that and you could say that's overconfidence. That's, a general lack of technique. You can also look at it and say that's just kind of being lazy. And obviously he's not lazy. The dude's playing both ways, right? He's playing, hundreds of snaps a game, but enough lazy, relative to it's the first thing to go, right? When you're tired, when you're fatigued, when you're exhausted, the last thing you want to do is be 100% on edge, giving 100% to the sort of basic first step thing, right? You're I'm wrecked. I'll sort of deal with it once I work out what's happening on this play, right? And that's what it feels like to me. So this is where I think it's tricky to evaluate Travis Hunter, because that's definitely a problem, right? He gives up these too often. He gives these free releases and puts himself in a bad position. I would think that some of that is down to this fatigue and tiredness and playing with sort of relative lackadaisical technique, because I think he's doing so much and too much, arguably, right? So I would say that is not an inherent trait, but it's one he's kind of developed as part of this insane workload that he has.
I don't want to spend a full hour on Hunter, but let's wrap it up with this question, right? Is he limited to a team that's not going to play a ton of man? And so, or does it work the other way, right? If he's just going to play man, if he's going to be a receiver first, can he go out there and play man for 30 snaps and just be a part of, say, nickel package, which is, that's 70% of your snaps rather than, 30 these days. But if he is playing man, you run around more when you play man, right? You have far more reps. When you're playing zone, you have far more reps where you're in your back pedal and you just you're not exerting as much energy, we'll say, versus a team. Can a team exploit this? Know if he's going to be isolated backside, just running crossers all day, running deep balls all day, just to tire him out. And this is a guy, by the way, who played 140 snaps a game in Colorado in the thin air, where it's really difficult and has incredible endurance, even if he did look tired at times. But I'm just saying, strategically, this could come up.
Yeah. So this is the problem, right? This is why most people projected him as a cornerback first who could play a package on offense, because it's just easier. If teams are, and by teams, the Browns, right? Since they're the team that's being projected to draft him and they're the team talking this morning, if they view him as a full-time wide receiver and then a guy who's going to play cornerback second, what does that mean? And this is, I don't know if anybody asked this follow-up question, but this is the obvious question, right? what does cornerback second mean? Does that mean he's going to learn wide receiver and he'll also kind of cross-train a corner for emergencies, but we don't actually plan on playing him there? Does it mean he's going to play, as our nickel? He'll be our third corner. So whenever we're nickel, he's out there. Does it mean, we have him, we can roll him out there, but he's going to be on, like, you get 15 snaps a game and we determine when it is, right? Like, I need to know how that's going to function, because I don't think he's limited to being a zone player, right? I think he's fully capable of playing man corner in any scheme, but I don't know that he can do that if he's also playing 50 snaps at wide receiver at the same time, right? Like, if I can control the number of snaps he's out there and the distribution of those snaps, and I can say to him, look, I need you to tidy up this technique. I need you to give it 100% every snap. Don't be lazy with your release. Jam the guy. Don't give him 2 yards and try and claw it back later, because you can't do that in the NFL. If I knew I could do that and say, you're going to play 15 snaps, right? Don't worry about being tired. We're going to make sure you have the rest. Then I think he can play in any scheme. He can play in man. He can play in zone. I don't care. If I'm stuck in this sort of slightly vulnerable position where he's playing all the time at wide receiver and he's our nickel, and so a team can trap him out there for a whole drive, and he's out there for 15 plays, on a drive, having just played 10 plays a drive on the other way, then I'm in trouble, because I think the first thing to go is his technique on these man coverage plays, and that's definitely exploitable.
And the last thing too, when teams run duo, which I feel like is, that's just a bunch of doubles and the running backs either taking it up the gut or they're bouncing it out. They run duo a lot of times just to get the running back isolated on the corner, just to get a one-on-one, because when he bounces it out, it's like corners on an island. I'm just saying those are the type of strategic moves an opposing team could use. Whether he's a good tackler or not, it's still a little different tackling an NFL running back, handling that pounding. I feel like there'll be some decisions made from opponents to, handle the Travis Hunter two-way deal. So, look, just a fascinating prospect. We spend a lot of time on him because we've never seen anything like this. There's a lot to unpack. We're talking about two players in one, and we don't have a precedent. There was never a precedent for him in college football since, like, Paul Hornung or something whenever he played, right? I mean, there's no precedent for this, so it deserves the extra time, and he's going to be one of the stories of the NFL season, much like he was in college football.
And again, just to wrap this up, he is cornerback 1 in this draft class if the wide receiver thing was off the table. Like, if he was just a cornerback, just evaluating his cornerback tape, I think he's the best cornerback in this draft.
All right, let's go CB2 here. You had Jahdae Barron from Texas. I had Will Johnson. Let's talk about Barron here.
Dude, I love Barron. I think it was Daniel Jeremiah, DJ, was making this point to an NFL scout or an NFL team of some description. He was like, look, you guys screwed it up with Brian Branch. You guys screwed it up with Cooper DeJean. Like, don't do it again, right? Just don't overthink this. He's too good. And look, the thing with Jahdae Barron, so 5'10", 196, played basically all over the Texas secondary. Played outside, played in the slot, played safety, played everywhere in that secondary. Again, a lot like Brian Branch.
Linebacker level, strong safety. Yeah.
And a little bit like Brian Branch, he doesn't perfectly fit into, an outside cornerback mold. Now, unlike Brian Branch, he has the 40 time and the speed to back it up, but he doesn't have the arm length. Like, he's not the perfect prototype, right? You wouldn't say he ticks every single box for every single team to play outside. His arms are relatively short. There are teams that just won't do that. They'll be like, no, he's not an outside corner for us. Immediately doesn't tick the threshold. But I do think he's just too good at everything, right? He's too good of a pure football player. And those two previous guys who also sort of fit that mold, I'm not sure quite what we do with him. Where do we play him? It doesn't matter. He's worth a first-round pick, and he'll make a huge impact in your secondary. But Barron, look, he's got the speed. He can play outside corner. I'm not 100% sure if that's where he belongs, like if that's his best position, but his quicks are elite. His reading of the game is elite. I love where he plays. Like, he's one of those guys, again, like Brian Branch, where you watch the tape and just watch the impact he's making in games. Like, he's the most impactful player in the secondary, almost regardless of where he's lining up.
I agree with so much, man. I love Barron as a player. he's a guy I like following where the buzz occurs through the process, kind of like the draft stock, so to speak. Like, when does the public catch on? This was right around the combine. I think he goes from late first, more of a second round expectation to, we interviewed Brett Coleman. You hear Daniel Jeremiah. We were both raving about him. And before you know it, it's like, okay, this guy is a top half of the first round type of player. If everything you said, if you're willing to just use him as a football player. I don't know what the exact plan is. Can he play outside corner in a zone heavy scheme that doesn't have to press as much? Yes. Does arm length generally matter in press schemes? Sure. I mean, he's got short arms, really short arms, right. Not just like below a threshold, but under 30-inch arms. It's really tough to play press man at the NFL level. Most teams aren't playing a ton of press man, right? Especially in today's NFL. And if they are, it's one of the corners where he's just locking on one side and the other player's playing off, right? So he doesn't have to do that. I have a soft spot for two plays in scouting, Sam. The center reach block. When the center makes a great reach block, love it. And I overrated in my head, and I've been burnt. John Michael Schmitz was great at it. Cameron Irving was great at it. Maybe I overrated it in my head. The other one is the cornerback replacement of the free safety interception, right? Where it traditionally happens, you're playing cover 3, you've got the deep third as a corner, but you only have the deep you're going to stay with the outside receiver if he runs vertically, but as soon as he runs a shallow, as soon as you know that he's not a threat, you go find work and you basically replace the free safety and go get it. This wasn't exactly that play. It wasn't the exact coverage, but the same concept. He did it against Colorado State. He's playing right corner, sees the shallow, goes and finds work, and then robs a deep crosser with an interception. Incredible ball skills, football instincts, just great football playing. I think that's why one of the amended emails about the Raiders was about Barron maybe being a free safety, like an Earl Thomas type for Pete Carroll was kind of his prediction, which I could see, right? He's like, Barron is the type of player where if you don't need him to play press man, you say, okay, he can play outside corner and nickel for us. But if you are Pete Carroll, is that crazy to think, man, this guy's such a good football player. He does remind me of Earl Thomas, and he ran a sub 4.4. Like, he is fast enough to play that type of role. And he's wearing the same burnt orange uniform. I'm not saying he's going to play free safety. I'm just saying he's such a good football player. The same way you said, hey, I think Brian Branch could play corner. I know he ran 4.6. I think he could play outside corner. He's that good at football. I don't care. I think that's how good Jahdae Barron is. You just want him on your football team, and will not figure the rest out, but he'll be able to fill multiple roles and just be really good at it.
Yeah, I agree. And I still think that. Like, I still think Brian Branch could play as an outside sort of boundary corner, if you like, in the NFL, despite his 40 time. He's just that good of a football player. He's that technical. He's that sound at everything. And I think the same thing is true with Barron. I don't know that I love him there. I don't know that it's his best position. And his best trait might simply be that flexibility, that versatility to be able to play anywhere in the secondary. I mean, the way he was at Texas, you could move him anywhere, right? There have been defenses that we've praised before. You know, one player has so versatile at safety, say, that he allows you to basically call any coverage you want because he can play single high free safety. He can play single high strong safety. He can play either split safety role. Like, he can do it all, right? And he can do that sort of tight end eraser thing that you like. Those are just positions within the safety designation. Now add in, legitimate nickel slot corner and outside corner. Like, Barron, I think, can play all of those at a pretty high level. So, it's weighing that, right? The ability to effectively be able to play, 3, 4, 5, arguably 6 positions within a secondary when you start factoring in different schemes, versus you can play outside corner really well, right? Like, which one of those two things is more valuable to you? I don't know that he can play outside, perimeter corner in every scheme to an elite level, but I think he can play 6 different positions within a secondary to a really high level. Like, that's a difficult thing to gauge in terms of value.
You just added my other scouting weakness, Sam. Versatility. The Isaiah Simmons, the Jabril Peppers. Look at all these things he can do. Doesn't always work out that way. Sometimes it's, you're doing too much and you're not mastering anything type of deal. But I like Barron a lot.
That's critical, right? that difference, the difference of true versatility, which is, can you do multiple different things to an extremely high level, and simple, not versatility, but like jack of all trades ability, right? Like you are solid at a lot of things, but you're not actually very good at any of them. That jack of all trades stuff doesn't tend to play at the NFL level, right? You actually need to be good at the things you're supposedly versatile at. Otherwise, it doesn't really count.
So anyway, I like Barron quite a bit. We're listing him as a corner. That's what he is. If there are concerns there, it's you lack the flexibility to probably play him in a press role. Fifth-year breakout season for him. The reason why he was a late riser in this process, he wasn't an elite prospect coming into the year. This was his 5th year at Texas, by far his best season. Those would be the concerns. Last thing I'll say, he reminded me of Trent McDuffie from a movement standpoint, the way he kind of moved around the field, free and easy. So I got some Trent McDuffie, Mike Sanders-Still type of vibes, right? You mentioned Brian Branch. We mentioned Cooper DeJean. It's in that mix of inside, outside player and just overall good football player who you want on your team.
A couple more points I would make. Number one, his PFF coverage grades when he was lined up outside as a true perimeter cornerback were elite. They were 90+ grades. It's not like this is a guy who sort of built up, a ton of positives, but oh, look, if we play him outside, actually it's not as good. He's elite playing outside. If you watch when Texas played Ohio State, who have a certain Jeremiah Smith, who, like Jeremiah Smith, freshman wide receiver, basically looks like Julio Jones playing in the Big Ten right now, or wherever the hell Ohio State plays these days. Still the Big Ten. How many teams are in it?
16.
Got it.
Maybe 18.
Anyway,
makes sense.
He looks like prime Julio Jones playing in the Big Ten with 16 teams as a freshman. It's insane. Like, the dude is an absolute freak show. He would be, I think, the #1 overall player in this draft, or certainly the #2. Now, when they played Texas, it's not like they matched him up with Jeremiah Smith, like they tracked him or whatever. But Texas were not afraid of leaving Barron on an island against Jeremiah Smith on the outside. And when that happened, Ohio State didn't immediately go after him, right? They didn't see that as a favorable matchup. We're like, oh, look, he's one-on-one with Barron on the outside. Let's throw a go ball and just go nuts. So both sides of that matchup were perfectly prepared to see that as an even contest, right? Texas were not afraid to leave him there whenever they got that matchup. Like, he basically played left and right corner, so that, it was dependent on when Smith came. But when that happened, Texas didn't roll coverage in his direction. They didn't do anything extra to help him out against Jeremiah Smith. Similarly, Ohio State, when they got that matchup, that one-on-one look, did not auto throw it in his direction, did not immediately target him. So both sides of that matchup saw that as an even contest. And Jeremiah Smith, I think, is basically a top 10 NFL wide receiver right now. So there's already tape out there of him doing that and being fine.
Jeremiah Smith, already a top 10 NFL wide receiver as a true freshman. Not a wild statement. It's not. All right. So I had Barron at 3. Clearly, I loved him. You had Will Johnson at 3. I had Will Johnson at 2. And why the difference here, Sam? What did you like about Will Johnson? Where would your concerns be?
So Will Johnson's got that incredibly smooth movement skills to him. 6'2", 200 pounds. He's coming off that injury, which muddies the evaluation a bit. And his athletic testing is going to be a concern. So we've got no 40 because of injury. The 3-cone and the short shuttle are 13th percentile or worse for a cornerback in the NFL. That's worrying, right? Like, the 40 now. Did he not run the 40 because he's recovering from injury? Does he not run the 40 because people don't expect him to run a fast 40 and he doesn't necessarily want to put that on tape? Overall, though, we're building this profile now of the movement skills are sick, but I don't know if he has high-end athleticism at all. And at some point that makes a difference, right? It matters in the NFL. I don't need you to be a super athlete, but I do start to get worried if you turn out to be a bad athlete, which is currently what we might be looking at with Will Johnson. I think he's really good in zone, right? His vision, his ability to read the play, his closing burst is good, but it pales in comparison, I think, to Hunter. And this is more of a Hunter comment than it is a Will Johnson comment. I think if you watch the two tapes back to back, like Hunter's burst relative to Will Johnson's is absurd. Which again, I think is a positive for Hunter more than it's a negative for Johnson. But I think it's worth putting out there as like, this is what elite looks like, and this is not that. I've seen him comp to Patrick Surtain a lot, and I do see that. But where Surtain really jumped out is he never lost. Even when he lost, right, when he gave up a catch, he was all over the dude in close attendance and made it difficult. Will Johnson is like Patrick Surtain playing style, but if Surtain just lost more often, right? And that feels like an important differentiator.
Yeah, he's becoming a really tricky evaluation for a lot of the reasons you said. I mean, the part I would disagree with is I thought his short area burst was exceptional. Now, I might be misconstruing his ability to just read the play and go for the actual speed at which it happened, because he had three pick sixes, one of them on a screen, right? One of them on like a little smoke route against Fresno State.
The screen one, like how, I mean, he just knew that was the play, right? Like he set off running for that so early.
No, I know. And so again, that sometimes it messes. I think when you're evaluating, sometimes it messes with your brain when a guy just reads it and reacts so quickly and attacks the ball. And it's like, was that athleticism or was that just great football playing? And then you mentioned, I hate the Surtain comp, because I thought Surtain, and in hindsight, we underrated him because he was just so technically sound in college. Like I never saw anybody as patient in press coverage as Surtain. Yeah. He never had any penalties. You made the point when we were watching corners, 3 to 5 times in their career, they're going to get destroyed on a double move. Destroyed, right?
And some of those.
Will Johnson has some of those. Every time I see a guy get beaten on a double move, I'm thinking of you. And I'm almost like, there's almost like a counter. Like you get 3, right? You get 4 of those, right? You get a couple of those. And then if it gets beyond that, it's too much, right? Surtain didn't have any of those. I don't like that as a comparison whatsoever.
But I get it. I see why it's a comp. Like stylistically, there are some similarities. But like I said, it's like the key difference is, he isn't losing as infrequently as Patrick Surtain. He does bite on those double moves. And as you said, like everyone does it generally except Surtain, particularly when it's like a sluggo on 3rd and 8. And it's like, I get it, right? There's a reason you're biting on that. But like everyone has those except Surtain.
So all of that reminded me, Asante Samuel of the Patriots, senior. The whole game reminded me of Asante Samuel. I don't even remember what Asante ran, but I don't think he was a great athlete. He just picked off a lot of passes. And at the same time,
I think he had a fast 40, didn't he?
He may have. But I just know that Asante would get attacked by double moves, probably bite on some. And so this is a different class. I think this is a cornerback class that can turn the ball over. Travis Hunter, Will Johnson, they can have those boomer bust type of seasons. Xavier Howard was the guy that we always compared players to, because Howard would get beaten a ton. They would use his aggressiveness against him, but when he guessed right, he's going to make a play on the ball. Will Johnson has that type of style of corner. The same names I mentioned for Travis Hunter, as far as having high interception totals, Trayvon Diggs, Xavier Howard. I'll put Asante Samuel up there. That's the type of player Will Johnson reminds me of. Not size, not movement skills necessarily, but what the production is going to look like. I think he could have one of those 6 to 8 plus, interception type of seasons and maybe give up a lot of yards, because even in college, they were attacking him with double moves. They were attacking his aggressiveness.
Yeah.
But man, when he sees it, Marcus Peters, the other guy that always comes to mind, right? These high interception total type of players, little boomer bust in their game. But when you hit the boom, you've got some incredible seasons where you're turning the ball over a ton. So that's the type of player Will Johnson is to me. If he's hiding his athleticism, I'm looking at other, on-field advanced data points. There's nothing that says, oh, don't worry, this one ticks that box for him. He doesn't have those just yet. So does that limit him from a press man perspective? Does that limit him in certain ways? Maybe. But, man, I just think he's got such great football instincts. And the last thing I'll add, Barron was a year 5 breakout for Texas. Will Johnson was a true freshman productive player. He was 3 years of pretty good production for Michigan. He's coming off of his injury last year too, so we didn't see a ton of him overall. He's got about 1,500 total snaps, but we're talking 3 years of playing well. He hit the ground running as a Big Ten freshman.
Yeah, and that I think that matters. Look, I really like him in a zone scheme. I think, and most of the NFL plays zone most of the time, right? So there's a lot of places where he fits and makes a ton of sense. I do wonder. I would be concerned though if a team that played a ton of man coverage drafted him. I would worry about his fit there. He's got the size for it, and he sort of looks like a prototypical man cover corner. But those movement skills, like that lack of, not the movement skills, the fluidity, the movement skills are good, but that lack of athleticism is concerning, I think, for a guy that, and the fact that he has already, bitten on double moves, all that kind of thing, that would worry me if I needed him to play man coverage all the time.
So, end of the day here, here's what I'll say. If there's a position that you would, I hear this all the time, bet on traits, which generally means bet on athleticism. And I think that that is, I would never use that as an NFL draft axiom. Yeah, just bet on traits, bet on athleticism. But if you look at the data, if you study it historically, there are certain positions where if you were going to ignore production, you would say take the athlete that's close, right? Cornerback, I think you can do that and maybe hit, right? The Tariq Woolens of the world, the Zion McCollums of the world. We have some recent examples of elite athletes who have done that. And tight end, maybe you could do that a little bit. But cornerback, you might, which means it goes the other way, too. If a guy does, so that's where if a team's debating Will Johnson and then, say, a Maxwell Hairston, who's got a 4.29 to his name, or 4.28, and some length and or some size generally, could you put Hairston over Will Johnson? Who I think Will Johnson's a better football player, even though he's got some of these weaknesses. That's where Will Johnson could fall theoretically on draft night.
Yeah, and just one point to make about the man versus zone stuff, right? It's great that we're able to sort of, like, places like PFF and advanced data, like, it's great that we're able to get more granular now than we used to with just coverage numbers, right? But it's not as easy as just saying man versus zone, because the line between the two is blurry. It's not like it used to be where you were playing, like if you played cover two, it was like there were pure cover two corners, Rondé Barber's era, right? Like, right. And a little bit after, there were guys that basically played cover two almost every single snap, right? Which is this spot drop into a little zone thing. And that's it. Like, you just sort of occupied a small bit of space. Your athleticism was hidden. You didn't need to be able to run very far or very fast, contrasted with guys who were locked up in one-on-one man coverage basically every single snap. You go and watch some Revis plays in that Rex Ryan defense. The dude's one-on-one on an island, Revis Island, like with half the field to cover, right? He is going anywhere that guy is going, no matter what the play is around him, right? Now, there's so much like pattern match, man within zone, like the lines between the two are very, very blurry. So even though I use that line, most teams play zone most of the time, it's not as much as it looks like it is, right? Like a lot of quarters coverage is effectively man coverage within theoretically a zone kind of shell. There's pattern matching within various different other zone shells. These are technically zone snaps, right? But for all intents and purposes, the responsibility for the corner is a man coverage responsibility. It's just the assignment can change a little bit depending on what the route concept is, what the play design is, et cetera, et cetera. So it's not as simple as like, well, this team only plays man coverage, 24% of the time. Therefore, I actually don't need a guy to play. I don't need a guy with man cover traits. But there's like, I don't know what the percentage is, but a huge chunk of that zone, percentage that they're using overall is effectively requiring man cover traits. Yeah. So, just be aware when we're talking about these guys who may have limitations in man coverage, that extends deeply into the percentage of snaps you're running on defense that are technically zone plays.
And just to add to that, Johnson, really quick, 6'2", but he's just over 30-inch arms. Again, most teams would love, if they're going to play you in press man, Pete Carroll's teams and some other teams want this 32-inch arm threshold. He's below even, he's just over 30. So we're talking about Barron's short arms. Johnson has that too. So I don't know if that limits him with some teams, right? When we're talking about draft position, more so than can he do it at the next level. I like a lot of what Will Johnson is. I just think last year's class, I didn't see high interception type of players like I didn't think Quinyon Mitchell or Terrion Arnold or Kool-Aid McKinstry. I wasn't looking at some of those corners last year. Cooper. as like, oh, these guys are 8 to 10 interception guys. The fact that I think Travis Hunter, Will Johnson have that. Even Jahdae Barron has these incredible ball skill type of plays where he just finds the ball. I think this is a class that could force some turnovers with these corners at the top.
Yeah, I mean, I do like Will Johnson, but I expected to like him more than I did when I went to the tape. And I went back to previous years. Like, I wasn't just looking at 2024 stuff. I went back to his better seasons. I still didn't really see this like truly elite corner level play. I think he's good, but I think, again, it's like a couple of other positions in this draft. There's like one star at the top, and even, other people have concerns about Travis Hunter. But there's like one star at the top. And then I think the next tier is actually less strong than it usually is. I think overall, like the baseline is pretty high, but that sort of top tier of the non best guy in the draft seems to be consistently weaker across most positions.
All right, man, let's go to your cornerback 4 here. We'll round out your top 5. Who'd you have again?
Trey Amos.
Let me start with this. I was first on Amos in my head, not like publicly. Okay. First on Amos like 3 years ago when he was at Louisiana. He looked like a man amongst boys. It was more when I was evaluating him from a transfer portal perspective, like, man, this dude should be playing. And then Nick Saban recruited him. And honestly, I thought he was going to go to – I thought he would – this was before Terrion Arnold was even a thing. I thought he was going to start opposite Kool-Aid that year.
He probably did too.
And he probably thought so too. And then Terrion Arnold starts, goes in the first round, and then Amos goes to Ole Miss and has a really nice season. So he's been on the radar for a while here for me, Sam.
Yeah. So, and he's got an interesting story because of that, right? So he's 6'1.5", 195 pounds. So, not necessarily not elite physical size and tools, but like right there where you want them to be. And he had, I think, 3 good seasons at Louisiana Lafayette. Then transferred, as you said, to Bama. Went to Nick Saban's looking for him. He goes to Bama. Like at this point, elite pedigree defense. Found himself stuck behind those 2 corners, 2 NFL starters, effectively Kool-Aid McKinstry and Terrion Arnold. And then when Nick Saban retires, he transfers away, right? He goes to Ole Miss and then has his best season in college. And he looks really, so that's what you want to see, I think, in this world of the transfer portal. And, you've done it at Louisiana Lafayette. Now go do it in the SEC. Go do it against elite competition. He took a swing at that and found himself buried on Alabama's depth chart and then didn't want to do it without Saban. Goes to Ole Miss, has a really good season, and now I think he's worth this high-end draft pick. He's an impressive athlete. He looks long, strong, fast. Like he's got all the tools you want from that point of view. Played a ton of special teams as well. Like he's got over 500 special team snaps to his name. It's always a bonus. I think he's good in both man and zone. I don't think he's one of these scheme-dependent corners. I think he's at his best when the play's in front of him in zone. Like he's got good pattern recognition when everything's in front of him. Sometimes he can kind of close his mind off a little bit to plays that can come in behind him. Like, oh, look, there's a play going in behind me, and so he sort of loses a bit of depth, doesn't like sink to where he should do. But if he keeps the entire play in front of him, he's playing cover 3 and everything's in front of him. He's got really good eyes for those types of plays in zone. I think he's got good man skills as well. I liked him a lot. I think he's he would fit for every team. Like in that world of the bottom of the first round where there's some teams looking for cornerbacks, I think Amos is on the board for all those teams.
A lot of solid across the board check boxes. I think you mentioned man zone. I think he flips his hips pretty well. You mentioned his zone plays. He had an incredible interception against South Carolina, passed off his man, broke on the ball.
Yeah.
I do write in my notes because we don't always know who's at fault. He's adjacent to some coverage busts, whether it's his fault or someone else, right? Those things stick out to me. They stood out. And I don't know where to rate those when you're evaluating, right? But if you're adjacent to them a lot, sometimes that's concerning. And then my other PTSD evaluating corners, I thought he was a little grabby at the top of routes. And I'm like, you can get away with that more in college, and that helps your college production, aka Gary Peters, if you guys have been listening for 10 years at Clemson, who we called grabby. Incredible production his final year at Clemson, CFL star now. But those guys tend to have issues at the next level. So those are on the concern end for me, for Amos, who I believe was he 6? Yeah, 6 on my list. So I was early on him, and now somehow lower.
Now you're backing off. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's definitely a couple of guys in this draft that I've got the grabby note on. He wasn't one of them. He definitely, it's always tough because it's a pretty fine line, right, between getting too grabby and like that's just the right amount of grabby, because you need, this. There are people out there that are like any form of contact from a cornerback, oh, that's pass interference, but it isn't, right? Like part of playing corner in the NFL is understanding how much contact you can get away with. Like you can't play with no contact. You can't treat it like, a non-contact sport and be like, I'm not going to touch the wide receiver and I'm just going to stay with him the whole way. The art of playing corner is how to manage that contact. And like, even when you're running with a guy deep down the field, you need a hand on him because you don't want to look at him. You need to have your eyes on the football. So you need a hand on the receiver so that you can feel if he's making an adjustment. Like if you try to do that without touching the guy, that's when the receiver makes an adjustment. You go like flying on by like it's Top Gun, right? Just tap the brakes a bit and watch him fly on by. You look like an idiot. You need to make contact with the receiver. You just can't go too far. Otherwise, it's a flag.
I won't write down grabby if it's just contact, though. I'm saying like at the
sure. I'm not
guys
you
running. Yeah. But I'm saying what we don't see. Travis Hunter had one of these incredible plays because there's no illegal contact in college.
Yeah,
there's not enough corners who actually try to make contact at say 10 yards down the field. Like and Hunter had a play, it was like 4th and 13. He makes contact about 10 yards, knocks the receiver off his route, then undercuts it for an interception. And it's like, that's just knowing the college football rules and making a great play on the ball all at the same time. I would love to see more college players do that, but then that clouds the NFL evaluation, right? Because, but how much of it is you just know how to play college football corner versus how well will this translate to the next level?
Yeah. There are these awkward gray area plays that are good in college, but bad in the NFL. Like because there's no illegal contact, you can effectively just get in his way 10 yards downfield and win the rep because he'll run right into you. His route's done. And then if you react first, well, number one, you've killed his route already. Number two, if the ball's in the air at that point, you have a break on it. That's illegal in the NFL. In fact, it's actually like an indication of bad play because you couldn't get yourself in the correct position and you had to end up like cutting him off. And that's a penalty. Like, but if you did it because it was if it did it because of deficiencies, it's bad. If you did it just because you can do that in college and it's a good way of winning the rep, then it's fine. So that evaluating those plays is tough.
For me, and I think some of the differences that we're going to have in rankings, for me, it's going to be like Amos, as you said, probably fits every scheme, and so for certain systems, I would bump him up over say Azareye'h Thomas from Florida State. There's going to be some very specific skill sets where this stuff moves. So I have Amos at 6. I still like him quite a bit, and he's number 6 on the consensus board for corners, number 39 overall on the consensus board right now. Could absolutely see him being a late first rounder, especially with the other injuries to some of the players he's competing with for draft spots.
Do you have a style of corner that you would gravitate towards?
No. Honestly, I mean, I think Azareye'h Thomas, I think could play great press man. I mean, that's the one place where I think I would care about scheme fit. I think overall scheme fit's overrated. Yeah. But if you know that you're going to have a locked backside corner that needs to play press man, or you're just going to play a lot of press man, if you're going to do that, you can't just evaluate Jahdae Barron and Azareye'h Thomas in the same lens. You just can't. They're completely different players. I think scheme fit's overrated, say on the defensive line, some other places maybe. I think it's rated properly at corner because you are asking those guys to do completely different things.
Yeah, do you? I think that's fair.
Who do you gravitate to? Really quick, I feel like I'm gravitating toward turnover machines this year. I feel like I'm saying I want Hunter to play corner because I think that the high-end potential of him in a season is there to create a ton of turnovers and have a massive impact. And same thing with Will Johnson. I don't know if I'm leaning that way with some of how much I like some of these guys.
Yeah, I don't think I necessarily have a style of corner that I gravitate to. I do like seeing evidence of like IQ while playing the position, like evidence that a guy understands what he's looking at, that can read a play, that can kind of anticipate threats as opposed to reacting to them. Like man coverage may be a really difficult thing to do, but fundamentally it's a pretty simple concept, right? Just react and follow what the guy does. It doesn't require an awful lot of thought in order to execute. Zone coverage, though, is so much more sophisticated. Like, you need to understand what the offense is doing. The threat might be the thing that you can't see coming until it's too late. If you were trying to react to it, you're already dead in the water. But if you understand the route concept, if you understand football plays and football execution, you can effectively anticipate the second threat before it's even shown itself and be in the right place at the right time. That, I like seeing evidence of that, or guys that can anticipate a threat before it's readily apparent to them.
All right, man, let's get to your cornerback 5 and then unveil 6 through 10 here.
Yeah, Maxwell Hairston, the Kentucky corner, who ran a 4.28, was it, at the combine? 5'11", 183. So, a little bit undersized. Early in his tape, so there's a couple of like blown coverages in cover 3 early in his season that terrified me, because I'm like, uh-oh, is this guy just going to be, a twitchy, fast man cover guy? But actually, the more you watched, he actually does have a good feel for zone. I don't know if it's just new play calls early in the season or just a couple of plays that happened early, but it wasn't the standard for him. His zone play is actually really nice. He makes some really nice breaks on the ball. He had a pick 6 against Ohio that was really nice, where, again, he did that thing like you mentioned with Trey Amos. He passed off one threat, made a break on the second one, took it to the house. Another player, I don't think he's scheme specific, so because of that, I think he works in any defense. Mate press man, I don't know, but he's got the mirroring ability. Like, he might not have the length necessarily, but he's got the footwork, he's got the quick twitch, he's got the speed, he's got the makeup speed. When the ball's in the air, if he's given up separation, he can claw it back when the ball's in the air. Like, elite speed. He had the best 40 and the best, measured miles per hour of any corner at the combine. That is visible on tape. He's got really good ball skills as well. Not necessarily just the catching, but like, he can elevate, he can go high point the ball. He, will jump up above a receiver and swat it away at the catch point. That part, and he seems to have, so he had a 39.5-inch vertical. But that thing, like when Michael Jordan took flight, the hang time that he had seemed to defy physics. Hairston's got some of that ability, not just to get 39.5 inches in the air, but to hang there an unusual and unreasonable amount of time and to make a play on it.
We need more of a hang time measure with the chips and the shoulder pads. I think you should be able to calculate that a little bit better. Yeah, I have Hairston lower. I don't love it. I liked him more the way I don't know if I got too scared by the plays you mentioned. Eyes caught in the backfield too often. And again, I don't know how much of that's what's going to carry over, but the other, like, Dane has him as cornerback 4, you have him as 5. I put him at 9, but I could see him as high as 6 or 7 for me, realistically. So I don't love the fact that I have him that low, because I did like him more the more that I watched. And I think the athleticism does play, and he could play a little man, and he's not as bad in zone as some of the busted coverages would show, as you said. So yeah, I like Hairston enough. So when we get to social media and my ranking has him down there and he's 4th cornerback off the board, I get it. I'm ready to take the heat. I just thought there was some inconsistency to his game and the production in the production area, where there's a bit of a projection based off the athleticism, but he's got all the tools, man. He's got good tools. He's got very good tools to work with the movement skills. And I just don't think he's as fundamentally sound as, say like Benjamin Morrison, who I have above him. So now I'm leaning on, I think, technique and footwork and production over, in Hairston's case, over the high-end athleticism that he has. So I liked him. I had him ranked low, liked him more than I anticipated, or on the second and third watch, because I've been watching him since the fall, off and on, but ended up keeping him a little bit lower in my rankings. But I get it. I get him.
Hater.
He's not like a full Shamar Stewart, where I'd go like full avoidance, or talk myself into.
No, I think he's
avoiding.
I think the tape's legit. I mean, there's some production there. I was impressed by him. Look, there were some minor quibbles, weaknesses, like his tackling technique is a little bit rough, but again, it's kind of like in that world of what's your standard? Like the standard baseline for college cornerback tackling is atrocious. Like, and in the NFL as well, like it's not what it used to be. Tackling technique, the league over, is awful now. So is his bad relative to that? I don't think so. It's not. It's frustrating and it annoys me but I want to see guys tackle like Jahdae Barron used to, right? But they don't anymore. So is that a reasonable standard to hold these guys to? Probably not. Sometimes I thought he could be a little slow decelerating out of his back pedal and matching, matching stuff that breaks out underneath, hitches, comebacks, curls, that kind of thing. Sometimes he's like, he's so good, so quick backpedaling, he can't hammer on the brakes. And sometimes those guys can snap off a route and get some separation that way. But man, overall, I think he's got elite traits. I think he can play in any scheme. And I like his fit in the first round for a bunch of teams.
Yeah. By the way, a lot of his negative plays were him getting exploited in zone coverage, where it was just they're setting up 2-on-1s on him. Right. He's got some of those coverage busts. I mean, in my notes, I'm like, he's pretty good in most one-on-one situations. He's pretty good, right? He's in good shape. So I think the athleticism plays. He's a little bit undersized relative to some of the other bigger press man type of corners. But I think, look, I get it. I understand Hairston. I like him a tick below my top 5, I would say 5 or 6, but I could see him getting up as high as 6, maybe.
He had a couple of plays. So there's a lot of corners played some interesting competition this year, Texas being one because of the speed that they had in the field. Like he had a play, I think it was against Bond, where he gave up a ton of separation, but then clawed it back in the air and was able to make a play on the ball. He gave up 60 yards or something against somebody, had a pass breakup. That one I'm just talking about. There's another play as well, again, where he gives up separation to Golden and runs him down like it's nothing. Theoretically, those two guys ran the same 40 time, right? One of them is a damn sight faster on the field than the other one, and it's not the Texas wide receiver.
More Matthew Golden negative speed reaction.
I mean, that one's evidence. A great rep to show that, right? Because those two guys theoretically ran, I think, identical 40 times, or 4.28 to 4.29.
Get it out there. Get it out there.
And yet, like, Hairston ran him down easily.
All right, we're going to get to the rest of our top 10 here in a minute, but I got to tell you about our surefire way to wake up feeling fresh after drinks with friends. It's called pre-alcohol. Zbiotics pre-alcohol probiotic drink is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking. So here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. It's buildup of this byproduct, not dehydration, that's to blame for rough days after drinking. So pre-alcohol produces an enzyme to break this product down. So just remember to make pre-alcohol your first drink of the night, drink responsibly, and you'll feel your best tomorrow. We put this to the test with our friends down at the Scouting Combine in Indianapolis, over at the Scouting Combine. A lot of late nights, early mornings, and work great for our friends throughout the week. So spring is here, which means more opportunities to celebrate warmer weather before drinks on the patio, that tropical vacation, or your best friend's wedding. Don't forget your Zbiotics pre-alcohol drink. Just drink one before drinking and then wake up feeling great the next day. So go to zbiotics.com/checkthemic to learn more. Get 15% off your first order when you use Check the Mic at checkout. Zbiotics is backed with 100% money-back guarantee. So if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they'll refund your money, no questions asked. Remember to head to zbiotics.com/checkthemic. Use the code checkthemic at checkout for 15% off. I was thinking, I don't know if our listeners like to have a few drinks while watching the draft or whatever, but do that Thursday night, Friday night. If you have to do it Thursday night, first round of the draft, work on Friday morning. But that brought me back and reminded me the first draft that we really covered, like end to end, was 2016. And it was at the PFF offices, and Chris and some of the other people, front office executives, we'll say, at PFF, they were like coming in to like celebrate the draft, like brought some wine and different things. And we're like, I have to write like 8,000 words tonight, like a watch on party. 32.
Like,
it was like
people trying to work here, guys.
Hey, let's celebrate. I'm like, I have to like not miss a pick and write 3 paragraphs on every player. Like, I'm probably not going to be, partying too much here tonight, but other people might be. And I was thinking maybe the pre-alcohol is good for like a Thursday into Friday, So go check it out. All right, man. Let's go to your 6 through 10, which features a couple of my top 5s.
Yeah. Number 6, Azareye'h Thomas, Florida State cornerback. Number 7, Shavon Revel, the ECU corner. Number 8, Benjamin Morrison from Notre Dame. Number 9, Darien Porter from Iowa State. And then number 10, Nohl Williams from Cal.
You put Nohl in there. Okay. So that's the one place I think, I have him just outside. But yeah, we're pretty close in a lot of at least the same names, different order. So I had Shavon Revel 4, Benjamin Morrison 5. So we'll talk about those guys in your order. I have Trey Amos 6. We already talked about him. Azareye'h Thomas, I have at 7. You have him at 6. Darien Porter from Iowa State, I have at 8. You have him at 9. And then Maxwell Hairston, just talked about him. I got him 9. Little regret there. And then I have the one difference, Jacob Parrish, the Kansas State corner, I put at 10. He was
11 for me.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think the consensus board is going to match where we are. It's like there's a drop off from in the middle of the top 10, and then there's a drop off from say 10, 11 into like the next tier. At least that's where perception is. So let's go player by player, starting with Azareye'h Thomas from Florida State, your number 6 corner here.
So 6'1.5", 197 pounds. So that's getting towards, true prototypical NFL physical tool size, tall, long, big corner. Now he only just cleared a 4.6. Like he's not blazing speed, right? So that's a concern. That's something that isn't the sort of prototypical ticks the boxes thing. But dude, that guy is powerful. Like he absolutely rocks receivers on contact. I don't think he has Shavon Revel's athleticism, but he packs more punch, I think, when he makes contact with receivers. He plays through them at the catch point as well, really well. Like you do not get easy catches if Thomas is within reach, within range. If he's contesting the catch, you're going to have to work for that thing because he's clawing at the ball. He's clawing at your arms. He's arriving with vicious intent. Another guy with a ton of special teams experience as well. Always a bonus. I love him in that press man cover type of scheme as well. Like he's perfect for that Buffalo Bills spot at the bottom of the first round, opposite Christian Benford. I think he gets solid feel for zone. I'm not saying he's only that, but I think that's a real sort of super strength for him.
And by the way, every time we mention the Bills, I'm mentioning it through this lens of they don't do that a ton right now. They're not a press man type of team, but they were showing signs that they wanted to last year more often, and they were showing signs that they wanted to do that against the Chiefs.
Yeah.
And the Bills are at this, I think they're at this team building stage where their baseline is going to be really high. And I'm not saying you're going to like only draft players to beat the Chiefs, but you might start skewing some of your team building decisions to make sure that you can win that biggest game of the year. And again, they beat the Chiefs every year in the regular season, and then they don't in the playoffs. So I don't know what that means exactly, but you are at that stage where if you think I need a press man corner because we're going to play man against that type of team, that's what we're going to do. That's where you're saying Azareye'h Thomas maybe over Trey Amos or over someone else if given that opportunity.
And I think they've been trying to skew in that direction for a while. They just haven't, a bust like Kaiir Elam has sort of held them back a little bit from being able to go in that direction. He certainly did when he got on the field last year. He basically changed the game plan because they're like, we can't have him. He can't play that. We can't run the scheme we want to run anymore.
All right. So the Beast has his name as Azareye'h. So I just want to apologize for every time I'm going to go with that. Azareye'h. We got to change it. Azareye'h. So pronunciation's on the Zar, second syllable, and then it's EA at the end. Azareye'h Thomas.
Okay.
I meant to check that before. So apologies in advance. Apologies. I don't know if somebody tried to correct me a few weeks back. I don't know if that was correct or not. Azareye'h, though. Let's go with that going forward for Florida State. I'm just with you. Like press man corner. I don't know if he's great in zone, and I thought he gave up a lot of room on crossers and other passes underneath. He might be too scheme specific, but he's also, because of this, the speed as well, but he's got the length. He's very physical, as you said. Catch point nuisance is the phrase I always like to use that I started with.
I like that.
Yeah, that was Sauce Gardner, I think was the first time I used that one. And he's only 20 years old at the moment. So that matters too. Like we're talking about Amos as a 5-year player and Barron's a 5-year player. Thomas is still young and wasn't targeted a ton because of his size and length. And so there's just not a lot of experience there and there's room to grow.
And I think maybe it's important for him because he had some weird assignment busts on his tape that didn't make it like sort of, I don't want to say basic, but like he would take the wrong guy out of a bunch, that kind of thing, where there's like 3 guys stacked. And it's the whole point of that, right, is to create confusion in the secondary. generally speaking, if you're playing man coverage, there's a way of passing them off, right? Like you're taking the inside release, you're taking the vertical release, you're taking outside. I mean, he would take the wrong guy in a bunch, and that guy would just be wide open, the guy that he didn't take. Or he would run with the second guy in quarters from an outside lineman, where the first guy is, your right went somewhere else, and for some reason you're running with the safeties guy. Like he had multiple plays like that, where it's like that's a basic sort of assignment goof, and maybe that's an experience thing, maybe that's a sort of youth thing, an inexperienced thing, and you can clean those up now that once we get older, once we get more mature, once we get more knowledge under our belt. But I love the sort of physical traits. I love his baseline of play. And then I'm kind of reading those things as something we can clean up as we get into the NFL, as we get more experience, et cetera.
That's a good question, because those are the questions I wrestle with all the time, even with Hairston. It's like, eyes caught in the backfield a ton, or coverage busts, or whatever it is. How do you weigh those? Is that a scheme thing? Is it really not actually his fault? Because you don't officially know. Right. You have an idea, right? We used to do the PFF grading, and you can use some intelligence. Like if 10 dudes are doing one thing and the 11th is completely on his own, it's probably him. So you can make some level of assumption. That's why I say coverage bust adjacent, because if that becomes a trend and you're always miscommunicating, or part of a miscommunication, I mean, half of playing secondary is just the communication aspect and being in the right place at the right time. So if that's a concern, that is a bit of a concern watching the film, which is why I think we tend to lean toward Azareye'h is more of a press man type of corner. And because of his physicality, that offsets the speed, right? But if you lose, that's where dudes can run away with you a little bit, away from you. And so that's, there's some boom or bust to that as well.
And again, it's also why it's always a crapshoot and a projection question mark, right? Because everyone can see those on tape, right? Let's assume you're reading the coverage the same. Everyone can effectively see those plays on tape and say, okay, he's responsible for X number of these coverage busts. But how you project that into the next level is totally up for grabs, right? You can read that and say, oh, he's young, he hasn't played that much, those will be cleaned up, and that's not a problem. Fine, right? You can basically dismiss them as, I don't care. We'll fix that, and we'll make sure he's on the right page, and it's not a thing, right? Or you can say, I mean, if you're screwing those up in the college level with more simple defenses, why will that get better once you get to the NFL and you're running more complex schemes? Like maybe that's an inherent problem with him, and you're going to get 2 or 3 coverage busts a game because of him, and that's catastrophic. Like that can't play in the NFL. So we're all looking at the same thing, but the way you weight that relative to like the other snaps in his tape is A, subjective, and B, there's no right answer to that, because ultimately none of us are going to know until you plug him into an NFL meeting room, and get all that work under it. So this is why, you hear all the time, like, well, let the tape speak for itself. Well, okay, this is the tape. We're all reading it the same way. But the question is, how do you weigh it? How do you value it? How do you weigh it against the other stuff?
That is it. I mean, we talk about that all the time. I think a lot of times people describe the same thing on film. Yeah. Same description, but come to different conclusions on how they value it. That's where evaluations become different. That's what I wrestle with as an evaluator the most, is I'm seeing this thing. Can you get better at it? Is this always going to be a thing? How does it relate to everyone else? Those are the questions that I'm trying to answer, more so than am I seeing it the right way? And then every now and again, people see it completely different. Like, I think this guy's fast. Do you think he's slow? Right? That happens too. But a lot of times we see it the right way and value it differently. So I have Azareye'h at 7. You have him at 6. Your number 7 is my number 4 here, Shavon Revel.
Yeah, so Revel's interesting because he's the most sort of unusual scheme specific corner out there. Like 6'2", 200 pounds, big, long press man corner, like the prototype for that. The good refs look great, right? Like he's got that Richard Sherman, Xavier Howard stuff where he's able to squeeze a guy to the sideline, run with him, and then blot out the sun when the ball arrives. And he's just too big, too long. There's no room to fit the football. But I think there's some rough reps in there as well. He gets upright. He sort of loses his change of direction once he gets too far upright. Marshall wide receivers were putting him in an absolute blender in 2023. So another guy that I went back and watched the better years from. they were wrecking him so hard that I had to go looking up Marshall receivers to make sure those guys weren't like sneaky superstars.
The one guy who wrecked him, he transferred to Notre Dame last year. Was it Hairston or Harrison, whatever it was? I did the same thing. I'm like, that is such a good rep. I need to, like, who's this Marshall?
But I was like, but it was multiple in that game. Like the whole game, he was put in a blender by Marshall receivers. And I was like looking at their numbers. None of them had more than like 450 yards that year. I was like, what the hell is happening here? And they did that to somebody else as well. Did that guy transfer and become legit? Because some other corner was playing Marshall. I'm like, I'm going to watch all of these reps now because my eyes have been turned by Marshall wide receivers from Revel's tape. And they were legit in that game as well.
I caught that too. I don't know if I have a blind spot for some of those negative reps, right? Again, it's like how you weigh it, but I caught those too. There's so much to like about the size, and I think he moves pretty well and the whole thing. But he's also going to be 24. So that's when you're weighing him against Azareye'h, you're talking, but like by draft day, by week 1, we're talking like probably 3 years of age difference.
Yeah.
And you have to weigh that. You have to say, like, what's this guy going to be a few years from now?
So this is the thing. Like, there's a lot of I like his ability and potential, but there are a lot of things that are a little bit that don't tick that box of like, this is what you want to see from these players. So number one, as you said, he's 24 years old, but he also feels raw at that. Like if he was 24 years old and already polished and looking like the finished article, I would have less of a problem. But his tape to me feels very raw, and he's 24. That is a little bit worrying. I don't know. Is he going to be brittle? For a guy that's 6'2", 202 pounds, like big, strong, you want to see durability in that. And yet he's had a lot of injuries, right? Not just the ACL in 2024, but previous injuries. Now, to be fair, one of those was from like a car accident, right? So it's not like that's a football. Your body just broke down, right? He's in a road traffic accident where motor vehicles are stronger things than human beings. So, but he's dealt with a lot of injuries, and that's a little bit concerning at this point. The other thing that was so he's the guy that I thought walked that grabby tightrope of, that's quite a lot of, I don't know if that's too much. The other thing that jumped out to me was, okay, so 2023 was his really good season. And, in those early projections were like, this is a first round player, blah, blah, blah. Teams were not scared to target him in 2024 before he got hurt. And it's not like he was playing powerhouse teams, right? He played in 3 games, and 2 of them, Old Dominion and Appalachian State, they targeted him 11 and 9 times respectively. Like they were not going, this dude is a first round player. We're not throwing the ball anywhere near him. They were like, pfft.
But he made them pay, man. He made them pay.
Yes, but I do think there's signal to the fact that they were not scared to go at him, right? A lot of elite corners in college, the second you get the rep of like, that dude's good, the ball doesn't go anywhere near them for the rest of their college career. This was the start of what was supposed to be his like crowning season. And 2, respectfully, nothing programs were like, we are firing the ball in the direction of Shavon Revel with abandon. We don't give a crap that he's out there.
I will say, I just looked at it quickly. Azareye'h was targeted just 38 times all season for Florida State.
He was targeted 20 in 2 games against nothing schools.
22 times in 3 games total for Shavon Revel in 2024.
So as you said, look, on the one hand, he did well when he was targeted that amount, right? On the other hand, why were 2 teams that should have been wildly overmatched and apparently were wildly overmatched by him not at all concerned to target his coverage? I think there's signal in that.
I don't know, but he made him pay. And I thought there was definitely some ugly in there with Revel. I thought hearing Dane talk about his story and small school college, and he's only played at East Carolina, that almost gives me hope that you could tidy up some of those technique issues, even at 24 years old. I just thought his overall athleticism and size, that package was better. Like I thought it was, when you talk about Azareye'h running slower and, maybe not being as great of an athlete, but just being a physical presence, I think Revel might be the best combination of both. And so that's kind of what I'm banking on, even at an older age, coming out of a smaller school, coming off of an injury. And I honestly kind of liked him in 2023. There's some ugly plays on that.
Yeah.
I get it. Early 24. You're saying signal in the targets. I'm saying when he was targeted, he dominated, right? Pick six.
Yeah, but against
six.
old again, like
But he
against Old
dominated.
Dominion and Appalachian State.
I understand, but that's like you can only play who you're playing in front of. We have to evaluate FCS products, right? So I'm not saying he dominated. He's CB1, like move over Travis Hunter. I'm saying I thought he was impressive in 2024 and before in the 3 games before the injury. And so that's what I'm banking on. That's why he's CB4 for me. And I just think he has a lot of the length and athleticism and levels of production that I think I think he was going to have a dominant 24 season, dominant season before he got hurt.
Yeah, look, I like his potential. I think he's got that classic. I love the gamble somewhere in the mid, in late day 2. The idea of him going in the first round would terrify me. I don't think the tape is there for that at all. The chat is calling us out for butchering Azareye'h. Even though you're taking it from Dane's pronunciation guide, which is it's the Bible.
Look, I've butchered it. I mean, if we were of the 30 times I've said his name in my life, I've gotten it right about 3 times. So, I mean, if you want to use that perspective, but I'm trending in the right direction. I have the right pronunciation now, and we're going to go Azareye'h from here on out and trust
right.
Dane.
Azareye'h.
That's Azareye'h.
Azareye'h. Azareye'h is the defined pronunciation guide, according to Dane, who knows these things.
That's it. So anyway, you have Revel at 7. Dane also has Shavon Revel at 7. I have him at 4. I'm buying in to what he brings to the table. It is an interesting dynamic, though. We talked about a team like the Browns tends to draft younger players. There's reasons for that, right? They get to the second contract at a younger age. They theoretically have more development time. I think that matters at certain positions, not others. I don't think it matters on the offensive line. We probably should consider it, though, at places like corner. And so that does matter in this world, especially with COVID years, and you're starting to see some older prospects who are really productive in college, and you have to try to weigh where the age comes in.
But he's also a great example of where, depending on the scheme you run, your board's going to look wildly different. Like if you run a team, if you are a team or run a scheme that does play a lot of physical press man cover, you're going to have Revel above Jahdae Barron, right? Like Barron's my number 2 corner. Revel is number 7. You're going to have Revel above Barron if you run that specific type of scheme because he's just a way better fit for that kind of thing. I think Barron's tape is vastly better than Revel's is, but that scheme, the traits, the physical body type matters, and you're going to have him a lot higher if you're running that type of system.
All right, you're a cornerback 8, Benjamin Morrison.
Yeah. I mean, dude, he's just so technically sound. Like is he the most technically sound cornerback in this entire draft? Just fluid, patient, efficient, more than held his own against Marvin Harrison Jr. the year before at Ohio State. Gave up 4 of 8 for 39 yards with 2 pass breakups. Most of it came on like one, deep off coverage dig route where those are going to get caught. They're going to go against you. So like he did really well against a legit NFL wide receiver. I thought he finds the football well in press coverage, doesn't just run with the wide receiver. It doesn't just face guard, play the receiver and nothing else. Like he actually turns, finds the football and does it because he's able to maintain contact, keep a hand on the guy. Plays a little bit lightweight. Like he's 6 foot, 193, but he felt smaller than that the way he plays, which is a little concerning. I thought he was another guy that's, scheme diverse, versatile, can play in any system. I liked him playing any type of scheme. Those injuries, though, were scary. Like Dane brought it up yesterday on our show, multiple hip injuries. Like that just screams red flag for a cornerback.
2 hip injuries. I'm going to read it from the
and hip surgeries, not just
hip
injuries. Surgeries.
Yeah. Missed most of junior year at Notre Dame after going hip surgery. That was last October. Hip labral repair surgery as a junior in high school back in December of 2020, which required 9-month recovery, and had a quad strain, missed a game in October of 2023, and then also missed most of the 2024 spring practices due to a right shoulder injury, which required surgery in March of 2024. So that's hip injuries, a quad, and a right shoulder. Because I'll I'm like Mr. Injury Ignorer. You know my
Doctor.
history, Sam. Right? What do I know? Right? I'm just like a data and evidence guy, right? So if you told me, look, corners with multiple hip surgeries or labral, it's not good, right? If it's not,
right. They've never worked out.
Yeah, then I will apply that data, but I haven't. So I got him at cornerback 5 because of everything you said. Technically sound. I mean, that would be the closest Surtain type of comp, right? If you're just talking technical, not the greatest athlete in the world, not the greatest physical, just really good at playing corner. Surtain's better than all that, by the way. I'm just saying the closest stylistic comp of how you would describe that type of player, I think would be Morrison, who I just liked quite a bit. But injuries, I don't know about his pure speed and athleticism. I think it's fine, but I don't think it's special. And the physicality did show up. I agree. Like, he felt small at times for sure. I always thought he looked like a first round corner. And so I think what knocks him down is, okay, you don't have the workout data. He's not a physical specimen, and you have the injury history, which has, you put him at 8. Dane has him at cornerback 10 as like a third round type of pick. I always saw him as a first round value. So I think this ultimately becomes, as a football player, I love him. He looks like he is worth the risk in the third round. You know, if he's around in the third round, you have a potential steal. I would still, if the medical checked out for me, probably still take him in the second and feel good about it. But he feels like the guy that I'll be saying, you know, Saturday morning, man, this team got to steal Benjamin Morrison if he's around in the third round, as a lot of projections have him now.
Yeah, the medical scares me. I think he's got like second round tape, but the medical is terrifying to me. The fact that I don't care that much about the shoulder, the quad strain, whatever. The multiple hip surgeries, I think, is a worry. Like, that's not hip. I mean, you hear, like, what's the first thing somebody, like, within 5 minutes of watching the combine, somebody's going to bring up hips for corners. Like, it's an important part of your movement skills and that technical ability that we talked about, right? One of the first fluid movements, right? Efficient movements. Does that disappear with hip injuries, right? That's the thing that would scare me. So again, neither one of us is doctors. If your medical staff's like, don't worry about it, it's not a problem, I think he can be a second round player. The fact that has happened twice would scare me into the third round at the highest.
Another thing I hate doing, but I'll bring it up anyway. He gets hurt pretty early in the season at Notre Dame, and he's the star corner. And they played a ton of man coverage and made it to the, finals in the college football playoff without him. So they replaced him. Now they have a stud redshirt freshman in there. I mean, they have some good players as well, but he was supposed to be like the linchpin of that defense. And even when he got hurt, they still managed to play an aggressive man coverage style and make it to the finals. I mean, thank you, Anthony Tresh. I mean, that's the one difference that they had at Notre Dame is Tresh calling the plays on the analytics side. That also makes Morrison, I don't know if that's last year the Bengals bought low, or they went with the risky upside play in the third round of Jermaine Burton. If Morrison's around in the third round, they have Al Golden as the defensive coordinator now in Cincinnati. Would they take Morrison in the third? People have already talked about Xavier Watts and that connection in the second for Cincinnati. Just an interesting one to look at on draft night, because I think you're getting I think him and Revel, right? I thought they were both fringe first round type of talents before the injury. I still believe that on film. It's just a matter of how much you want to weigh those things. So I understand a lower ranking. I put him at 5 because I don't have all that injury information.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I think he's better than that on tape, but I worry about the injuries.
Yeah, I think that's all fair. Before we get to the last two, been doing this the last couple shows here, Sam. I had never heard of Skims before. For men, not for men. Had not heard of that before. Surprised to know that they're now offering men's underwear, though. So we're here to tell you it's all worth the hype. Skims.com/CTM. Go check it out. Got a couple samples, and the Skims are great. Whether it's stretch or cotton. I tried both. I like the stretch a little bit better, but the comfort is out of this world. Need to convert the whole underwear wardrobe, Sam, to Skims. Comfortable, practical, fits better than any underwear I've had before. So loving it so far.
Yeah, elite level boxer briefs. Big fan of those. We should, the way, like, generally speaking, underwear advertising, modeling. It's like, here's a picture of the beautiful people wearing the underwear. We could do it as a threat, right? go and get some Skims underwear for men, or we will show you a picture of me and Steve wearing the underwear.
I like that. I like that.
Coercion.
In the past, we would have said, if we have 100 people or we have 1,000 people that go buy it, we will unveil. That's not going to motivate anybody. You're right.
No, now it's like if we don't get 100 people buying it,
if we're under 1,000, we're putting pictures out there. Skims offers 2 types of boxer briefs for men: cotton or stretch. Cotton is designed for day-to-day use. Stretch is built for athletic performance. As I said, I tried both. I like the stretch. I think it's fantastic, but they're both good. So you can shop Skims Men at skims.com and Skims stores. Let them know we sent you. Here's the important thing: skims.com/CTM. Go check that out. You got to select podcast in the survey, though. Select our show, check the mic in the drop-down menu that follows. You got to do it. Select podcast and check the mic. Make sure the family gets proper credit over there. Skims is the official underwear partner of the NBA, WNBA, USA Basketball, and, of course, now check the mic. All right, Sam, let's get your last 2 corners. CB9 for you.
Darien Porter from Iowa State. So I had to talk myself out of putting him crazy high. Chris Sims had his cornerback rankings out earlier in the week. He has Darien Porter up at 4, loves him. I was in that boat for a while. I then went and looked at his Senior Bowl stuff. I thought that exposed some weaknesses. Now, look, a lot of the receivers at the Senior Bowl were like high-level route running guys, right? So I thought he was duffed up a little bit by some of those guys. Like he had some problem with footwork at the line with some of those quicker, faster route running technicians. But man, dude, so number one, just a wild profile. He's 6'3", 195 pounds, and might be the best athlete at the position in the draft. In fact, probably is, regardless of size. But at 6'3", 195 pounds, he ran a 4.340, a 1.51 second 10-yard split, a 6.7 second 3-cone, and a 4.04 short shuttle. Those are elite numbers regardless of the size. For 6'3", 195, those are like off the chart stupid. He's got 33-inch arms. He's got an 80-inch wingspan. Like, those are insane numbers as well. And then the other part of it that's so insane is he's had a 6-year college career, 3 of which were on offense, the last 3 of which were on defense. He has the team record at Iowa State for most games played at 64. But out of those 64 games, 7 of them are starts at corner. So he's got a 64-game college career, of which only 7 are really applicable to what you're trying to project forward to the next level. So you've got this freak show athlete and like 7 games worth of evidence of what he can be at the next level. So he enters the NFL at 24 years of age again with like no sample size of what he can be, but the sample size that he does have is absurdly good.
Yeah, there's a lot of, this is great. Yeah, but I mean, there's a lot of that. I'm surprised one thing you didn't mention. So first, really quick, as far as his measurables go, you're talking Tariq Woolen type of size, speed, and the agilities all together. Like there's him and Zion McCollum, I think, are the only in that relative range. And then the other big corners who didn't run as fast but had incredible change of direction. The 2 names that always come to mind were Akello Witherspoon, who had great agility drills, and Kevin King. So this doesn't always mean you're going to have a great career. Akello Witherspoon's had a really nice career. Reek Woolen's been a little up and down, but certainly has incredible potential in any given year to dominate with his size and movement skills. So that's what you're talking about with Porter. Then the other similarities to Reek Woolen would be the former receiver and kind of young at the position, so theoretical upside, which balances out against the age and everything. He also made one play. I don't know if do you remember his interception? He had 2 interceptions against Iowa this year. Do you remember his first one? I figured this would be near and dear to your heart. The same way I have some soft spots for certain things. And like, if you can make a play on the cover 3 crosser as a middle backer, it's like, dude, that like breaks defenses. And if you make a play on that, you are an incredible defensive player. Deion Jones at the Senior Bowl. The yoink play, the yoink play, as you call it, at Iowa.
Yeah.
Every defense is broken by that, right? It's the OS play, the tight end, he falls out and he leaks. It's called leak. It's called a million different things. Leak out the backside, right? You call it the yoink. Well, he picked one of those off, Sam. He was the backside corner on a yoink leak play, and he picked it off. That's incredible. I have not seen that ever, I don't think. And Darien Porter had a pick on that. So I figured that would really sell you on him.
Yeah, honestly, I mean, his tape is absurd. Like he's got the most wow athleticism on tape of any cornerback in this class, including, I think, over Travis Hunter, because he's got the long speed as well.
Right.
And he's bigger. You know, like his fluidity and change of direction skills are so much better than they should be for a guy that's 6'3", 195. And he shows that he knows what he's doing as well. Like he's such an interesting prospect because like he's got over 1,000 snaps of special teams experience. So, and in the Beast, in Dane Brugler's write-up, he has a quote, I think, from a coach of his at Iowa State where he calls him like the most selfless, player that he's ever been around. Because the guy basically spent 6 years just trying to help the team, playing every week, but not really playing, like playing special teams and basically being on the bottom of this roster. And then he finally gets a shot and plays 7 games as like a bit part player, looks out of this world good. But now we're trying to project at 24 years old, this super athlete, like to being a starting corner in the NFL based off 7 games where and no real good explanation for why this guy wasn't doing something at Iowa State before that. Right. It's not like, this would make some sense if we were talking about like Georgia, right, or Alabama, or a defense where you can get buried on the depth chart for no good reason. Like you can just find yourself behind elite, 5-star recruits all wall to wall throughout your entire career, and you end up hitting the NFL without ever really having shown you should be a starter. That doesn't wash as an excuse when you're at Iowa State. You're like, why? You couldn't find a way to get this guy on the field in some way, shape, or form more than you did?
This goes back to our discussion about what do you do with information? How do you weigh it? Remember, a few years back when Leighton Vander Esch and Tremaine Edmonds both came out at linebacker the same year. They were both first-round linebackers. Tremaine Edmonds was like 3 years younger, but had played 2,000 more snaps than Vander Esch. And we sat there and debated. Vander Esch has under 1,000 snaps of experience. Edmonds has a ton of experience, but Edmonds is younger. Where's the theoretical upside? Because you want to draft somebody that has projection, right? Projectability, right? We hope this guy's going to at least be as good, if not better. We hope he's going to get better. Which one do you weigh? And again, I'm an evidence-based person, and I don't know that we have great evidence that it's either one, right? Like we don't know which one it is necessarily. So Porter has 747 snaps of ball on the offensive, right, on the offensive or defensive side of the ball. He has 340 something snaps in coverage. That's
367.
367. That's it. That's all he has with that physical tool set. So very interesting player where, again, I had him at 8. You have him at 9. If you put him at 4 or 5 just because you wanted to play that projection game, like I get it because you don't have that type of athlete very often.
Yeah. 200 of those coverage snaps came last year in the 7-game stretch of starting, which yielded a PFF coverage grade of 90.1. He had 17 targets, which is not a lot even in 200 snaps. He gave up 5 catches for 70 yards. He had 3 interceptions and 2 brass breakups, which is a passer rating into his coverage of 4.7, right? So, I mean, these are absolutely absurd numbers. Chris Sims said that he has first-round tape. I think that's true. I think he has first-round tape. It's just there's only 7 games of it. And I don't have a good explanation for why that's true. Number one,
I was just going to say the first point that you made about him, like he's a linear long speed type of player. The horizontal routes, the shiftier route runners, the guys that he ran into the Senior Bowl, those guys do give him problems. Like they do a lot of bigger corners. Other bigger corners can kind of like suffocate them. And I just didn't see that as much from Porter. So that is a concern at the next level.
Right. But he has a 6'7" cone, like his measurable change of direction stuff. And he got hip fluidity. He's just not very good at it yet because the dude's played 7 games, right? Like he started 7 games at corner and he's only been playing corner for a couple of years. This is why he's so interesting. Like if he was 21 years old or 20 years old and you were like, man, think of the development we can do. Like we got freak athlete who's got amazing tape, albeit only 7 games, and he's young. So that the potential is through the roof. But because he's 24, it's like that makes it awkward because theoretically you want him to be there already, but he isn't. He's another guy. So according to the Beast, he could have come out a year earlier of high school, but stayed back to basically crush the state track championships. Like he set a record in the 400 meters. He won the 200 meters and he was second in the 100 meters, right? So he could have been basically a year earlier and be 23 now, but he stayed back, crushed the state track championships. And so we're like a year even further removed from what he could be. I just think, again, I kind of agree with Chris Sims. I think he has first round tape. There's just only 7 games of it, and he's old, and he's got this weird backstory, and I have no earthly idea what to do with that. If you wanted to do what Chris Sims has done and say he's the 4th corner in this draft, I applaud that boldness, and I get it. I don't know what the hell to do with his story that I have him down at where I have him 8, 9.
Yeah, similar.
But conclusion. I love his tape.
Yeah.
Love it.
I wrote down looks like one of the best corners in the draft, but he's 24.
Yeah.
One other concern that is Riq Woolen, like 6 missed tackles on just 19 attempts in the run game. So he's not the best tackler in the world. There are some concerns with him, but theoretical upside, even at 24 years old for Darien Porter. I can't believe you stole Chris Sims' take like that. That's plagiarizing. He's my 8. So we have the same players all in the top 9, slightly different top 10s. So give me your cornerback 10 again. I'll give you mine, and we'll get to some just missed players.
Nohl Williams from Cal.
Nice. But led the FBS in interceptions last year.
There you go.
Ball hawk.
And yeah, sick ball skills, movement skills, 6'1", 200 pounds. His movement skills are great. Like fluidity of movement is awesome. He's got some awful awareness plays on his tape, which I didn't love. Like just running into a brick wall against like mesh plays and stuff. You're like, come on. You don't need head on a swivel, but like you're looking at the thing you're running into. Like, how do you just run right into it? I thought he was much better in actual press man coverage than he was in off man. I thought he's that movement skills, the ability to mirror plays really well. He tracks the ball so well when it's in the air, though. Like he's got really good ball skills. And when he catches the ball, he's a legit threat with it in his hands. Like that guy's got playmaking skills when the ball's in his hands. It's a threat to go the other way for a touchdown if he ever intercepts it. His transition movements.
Kick return touchdown last year as well. Had a fumble.
Yeah.
Too, but kick return touchdown in there as well.
Yeah, like a kick return experience, which number one is now sort of on the rise in terms of value, and a kick return touchdown on his resume, which shows, he's got the threat to actually do that. He's a better run defender than I expected him to be as well, given his he looks, a little bit lean, a little bit more of a finesse player, but his transition movements are just sick, like absolutely elite. He can stay balanced, maintain speed when he's transitioning at breaks with receivers to stay right in their hip pocket. I really liked him. Again, we talked about it before. He was one of those guys that I have written down on a whiteboard over there from a play I randomly saw like a year ago, on somebody else's tape, in 2023 tape, watching somebody else. And Nohl Williams makes a play, and I wrote his name down for the future. And I stayed liking him when I watched through his tape.
I love it. Whiteboard guy. We need a list of the whiteboard guys with Nohl Williams. No, I like a lot of what you said. I think the ball skills, him staying in phase and man, going up and attacking it. There's a lot to like there. Doesn't it feel like there's a lot of players, including Porter, who we just talked about? There's a lot of players who could be turnover machine types at the next level, high end, high interception totals. Which I let me just describe this properly. I think that's overrated to chase generally, but you have to know what you're getting into, because a lot of times you don't bank on a guy having 8 interceptions every single year, but right place, right time. If you have those types of ball skills, you have that type of year. It can happen, and it's an unbelievable outcome. That's like Deron Bland happens one year. Xavier Howard happens one year. Those things are great. I'm not saying Nohl Williams is definitely that, but there's a lot of players that have that turn the ball over ability in this draft. I think he's one of those guys, despite some of the other flaws that you mentioned.
I don't think it's necessarily overrated, but you have to ask what the flip side of the equation is, right? Like, those are great. That's a fantastic thing to want. Yeah, to be chasing, to have as an upside play, but what am I giving up while I'm chasing that, right? If the guy is a liability in coverage, but he's a potential ball hawk when the ball's in the air, well, okay. But like a touchdown. Like if you give up one touchdown, that's a catastrophic play, right? So it's balancing that. But if the guy's good overall and he's got the ability to be a ball hawk, well, now we're cooking. Now we can chase that because that is worth a lot more than the guy who's just good at the catch point, but he's swatting everything down. He doesn't give up a lot, but he's not going to turn it over. Those do make a difference. It's just I need to know what the negative side of the ledger looks like.
So I had Nohl at 11. He was the top guy that just missed for me. You're number 11, my number 10, Jacob Parrish from Kansas State. We talked about him a little bit on the sleeper episode. I think his stock is rising, so to speak. He is, I think he's close. I think he's in the top 10 for Dane as well. So maybe he's number 9 for Dane. So he's not as sleeperish as I thought. But I just like a lot about the way he tackles, played zone, gets gritty, plays the slot, plays outside, moves well. Like other Slider, what's he, 5'9", 191? Yeah, he gets
just like he's 5'9" and 7/8 or something, I think.
5'097. He was 5'096 at the combine, 5'097 at Pro Day, if you want the official NFL reading.
Exactly.
But ran a 4.35 also. So I love the way he moves, flies around the field. Just dude you kind of want on your team, and gets grimy in the run game and in coverage. So I like that.
Yeah, like he's kind of an interesting player because he's that, on the one hand, he's that classic, scrappy, physical, undersized corner. And at 5'10" or just under, a hair under 5'10", but he's 192 pounds. Like that's stacked at that size. Like I'm 5'11" and I'm 15 pounds lighter than that. Like he's a heavy guy at that size who also runs a 4.35, like blazing speed at that rate. But he does have he's got a couple of the limitations that usually kick a guy into the slot, right? Like you're short and you have short arms, ergo you can't play outside. You're going to have to kick in. But he's a lot heavier than your standard slot corner. He's a lot faster than your standard slot corner. And he hasn't actually played there that much. He's played in the slot, but like 200 snaps over 3 years in coverage of the slot. That's not no wealth of experience. So I don't know if he's automatically a kick him inside of the slot at the next level thing, or if he's one of these guys that's going to play, inside and outside, and teams are going to bank on, let's trust the tape. He's done it outside. He is physical. He's powerful. Let's go with that.
Yeah. I'm interested in that development arc, right? He's not tiny, fast, inside outside ability, tackles well. I like him as CB10. I think there's probably a drop off after the first 9, though. I mean, I think that is
Darien, the teardrop.
So now Dane has him at 67 overall, Parrish, and he has him ahead of Benjamin Morrison. So I would just kind of flip that. I think the top 9 corners are in a different tier, and then you tier the top group differently as well. But we were talking about Darien Porter. I would say Darien Porter and Maxwell Hairston for me, who I have a little bit lower. If you want to put them at 4 or 5, I get it. Like athletic profile, size for Porter, weird trajectory as far as career. Like I get that. I don't see Parrish creeping into the top 5 or 6 on most cornerback rankings. I could see it for any of our top 9, and maybe for me almost interchanging 4 through, not completely interchanging 4 through 9, but if you put any of those guys at 4 through 9, I get it. Like I could see the argument for them. So that's how I would look at this cornerback class, at least 9 heavy, and then a bit of a drop off into 10 and beyond.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a teardrop between the sort of top couple of guys and then the next tier. And then I think there's a teardrop here at the end of the first 9 guys, and then 10 through the next group is a teardrop. So, you're looking at whoever you want to draft up top, and then you're looking at the guys at the bottom of the first round into the second. And then this sort of group of like third rounders before this teardrop.
All right, man. Do you have any other guys that just missed for you, or do you want to just get into some other names and sleepers here?
Well, so Jacob Parrish was my number 11. He just missed. I mean, I think there's a couple of guys that were close, but we'll probably let's just run through some names we need to talk about. And then I've got one sleeper who we may cover anyway, but a guy that I loved his tape and as a mid-round guy.
Za Frazier from UTSA, just as a general, I don't know. I mean, consensus-wise, I think he's in the top 15. Another one of those. I mean, I think we mentioned him on the sleeper show when some of the some of our listeners were naming a whole bunch of players. This is one of those athletic upside type of players, 6'3", 186, ran a 4.36, solid shuttle and cone times, and UTSA background the same way Reek Woolen did. Not exactly the same type of workout. Pretty good ball skills, made a ton of plays on the ball. So if you're talking mid-round athletic upside play with the size and movement of Za Frazier, I like that quite a bit.
Dorian Strong, I think, is a pretty fun name. I thought his tape was solid, not spectacular. Virginia Tech corner, 6'1", 185 pounds. So in that Travis Hunter world of like long and lean, but he's got short arms, which is, there's a lot of guys this year who seem to be taller than they are long. Like you tend to assume they're the same thing, but actually there's a bunch of guys that are like 6'1", 6'2" with fairly stumpy arms, which is a little weird. He's, I think, quicker than he is fast. But did you see his 3-cone time?
No, I did not. Right. Oh,
I had to check that it wasn't a misprint. He ran a 6.56 3-cone.
What? I did not see that.
Which is like off the charts absurd.
I thought he was kind of tight-hipped too. I mean, that's not exactly the same exact skill set,
right?
But
so his short shuttle was 4.08, which is a very good time. But 6.56 3-cone is like 100th percentile. It's like nuts. And a 4.5 40. So he's not particularly fast, but his 3-cone is off the charts good, and his short shuttle is reasonably good.
Yeah, I mean, he's in that next group, I think, of the 11 to 15. Denzel Burke from Ohio State had a disappointing final season. He got absolutely torched by Oregon in their first game. He was supposed to be a fringe first. I thought Ohio State, I described Ohio State all season as having 15 second rounders, of which I thought Burke was going to be one of them, right? Between him and Sawyer and Tyleek Williams and JTT, like it was all second. Donovan Jackson, it's all second rounders. But I think Burke's actually one of those who's probably played himself into maybe late day 2 and into day 3 because he was just so inconsistent last year. But he's probably discussed in that 11 to 15 range as well.
Quincy Riley from Louisville, 5'11", 194 pounds. So his bad plays, I thought, were problematic. Like you know what I mean? Like it's what's the good side of the ledger? What's the bad side of the ledger? The bad side of the ledger for Riley is awful. He's got some really ugly coverage reps. His missed tackle rate was 25% last year, according to PFF. It's like 20% for his entire college career. He's one of the worst tacklers I can remember seeing for a long time. But his ball skills, like his plays on the football, might convince teams that it's worth giving it a shot anyway. He's got like 19 pass breakups over the last couple of years, 5 more interceptions on top of that. The flashy plays are nice, but the bad plays are rough.
The feistiness, I thought. So last year, Drew Phillips for the Giants. Again, Dane really liked him, was kind of one of his favorites. Not so much the tackling, but I got some of that vibe watching Riley, where I'm like, there's some bad play. That was Phillips at Kentucky. There's some bad plays on here, but I could see people liking the feistiness and the plays on the ball, everything that you mentioned. But yeah, he's one of those guys where I thought everything was just kind of mediocre, but the more you watched him, it's like, all right, sees the game, he's around the ball and feisty and this. I get it, right? But again, in the 11 to 15 type of range. And
I will say he's another guy where like I thought 2023 was better. Like last year he was battling some injuries, and I think it's hard to know if that was like the reason for the bad play or the bad play was just there at the same time as he was battling injuries. But I do think if you only watched his 2023 tape, you would rank him higher than you would looking at 2024 as well.
That's pretty much all I have. Anyone else you have in the just missed world, or just players you wanted to talk about?
We had somebody in the chat there throw up a shout out for O'Donnell Fortune, who I desperately wanted to love because of his name. South Carolina corner, 6'1.5", 189 pounds. Sort of another one of these reasonably skinny corners. There's some decent on his tape. Like actually he's a reasonably decent corner production wise, but he is quite lightweight. That shows up on tape as well. The tackling technique is rough, but he's got reasonably fluid movements, and there's some good stuff there. I don't know that he just has the required athleticism to work out at all. He ran just under a 4.6, which is that problematic cutoff line. His 3-cone was 7.4 seconds. Remember we just talked about Dorian Strong running
almost
a
a second,
6.56.
0.9 seconds different.
It's like a second faster over a 3-cone. That's nuts.
Yeah, that is problematic. I saw the chat mention Mac McWilliams from Wake. I'm sorry, yeah, from Wake, UCF, the helmet. He really popped at the Senior Bowl. And so he was a 5-year player. 5th year was 4 years at UAB, then goes to UCF. And then he was the guy. I wasn't, you go into the Senior Bowl like looking for specific play. I want to see this guy. I want to see that guy. Before you know it, UCF helmet's making play after play, or at least he's in tight coverage. So he popped at the Senior Bowl. I understand some of the Mac McWilliams hype, in and out. He was pretty good just on horizontal routes, on little, in and out routes, just sticking with receivers. Did a nice job.
The name that I wanted to talk about, though, is I'm going to call him my sleeper, or just the guy that we want to talk, that I want to bang the table for later in the draft. Bilal Kone from Western Michigan. 6'1", 190 pounds. He looks the part. He's got all the tools. Apparently, according to Dane Brugler and the Beast, literally wasn't ranked by recruiting services at all. Like a 0-star recruit, had to go through the JUCO route, didn't have the grades, then went to Indiana State. Like that, once he got out of the JUCO, went to Indiana State. That was the sort of the biggest leap he could make. Then from Indiana State, went to Western Michigan, and did that in part because he knew that they were going to face some legit programs in the next couple of years, including Ohio State, Wisconsin. Like basically did as good as he could do in terms of trying to prove that he could do it at an advanced level of competition without anyone banging his door down to let him have those opportunities. He has a rep against Ohio State that I loved. I showed you this earlier, where he's the cornerback on the nub side to a formation. He's basically got the tight end releasing vertically. The tight end trips on his way out, basically falls flat in his face. Most corners at this point, I think, would just switch off. But it's like cover 3, he keeps getting depth and actually is able to read the kind of post coming from the other side of the formation and run it down. And okay, he's helped by an underthrown pass by Will Howard, but ends up breaking it up. I think he's most corners are not anywhere near that play. They're 10 yards behind it, trailing it. They saw it too late. For him to recognize that, I thought was really impressive. He had another play where he's basically being cleared out by Jeremiah Smith deep down the field and recognizes the deep over that's coming back across the field into the area that he's just been run out of. Not quickly enough. Like he contests the catch, right? It ends up being made anyway. It's a good catch by the receiver. But for him to actually be contesting that catch from that, I think is really impressive. So he had some really, really good awareness plays, that showed serious IQ, serious understanding of what offenses are doing. Elite route runners can definitely mess him up a bit. Like his footwork gets a little bit out of control when he goes up against really good guys that can get him wrong-footed. But man, I really like this play. I think there's some work in progress between that. He doesn't do a ton of backpedaling. Like that defense uses a ton of that sort of sideways bail technique that Richard Sherman did a ton in his career. So you might have to work on that at the next level if your scheme doesn't run a lot of that. But I would love this guy in the late in the draft.
Where's Kone on the? He's at 216 on the consensus board. That's right around cornerback 20 or so.
Right.
So that's a good sleeper. My sleeper's in a similar range, 223 on the consensus board. Jabbar Muhammad, Oklahoma State to Washington to Oregon. Man, the dude just makes so many plays on the ball. He's just not an NFL-sized athlete. Size or athlete. That's the question. So slot type of player at the next level, Jabbar Muhammad. Short arms, runs a 4.5, and he's like 5'9". So he's just not an NFL athlete across the board, but I think he could play in the slot. He was just always, I used the word nuisance earlier, catch point nuisance, but not because I usually reserve that for longer corners. But that was Muhammad, man. He was just always in the hip pocket, stays on the top of post routes, runs with crossers. He's just always there at the catch point. Had Washington's run to the national title game in 2023. He made a ton of plays there, made a ton of plays at Oregon. Last year, went to Oklahoma State for 3 years, as I mentioned. So, yeah, I just think Muhammad's a guy that I kind of like. I really thought, like, after just watching him before he tested and everything, I'm like, I just thought that he was a really good player that was expected to go higher before you realize, okay, he is probably smaller and slower than you want, but I think he could be a slot option at the next level, even though he'll be 24 years old. I like Muhammad. 33 on Dane's board at corner and probably about 23, 24 among corners on the consensus board right now.
Nice.
There we go. We did it in under 3 hours. We're pacing around 2 to 2.5 hours for our top 10 ranking shows. Reminder to everybody, we're going live draft night. Please be with us Thursday night, Friday night. Be sure to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss anything. We're going an hour early, 7 p.m., right when Aaron Rodgers announces what he's going to do to try to steal all the draft thunder. That's my prediction. But yeah, we're going to go live 7 p.m. draft night. The draft goes live, of course, at 8. So we'll preview it. We'll be there to react live to every single pick. And then we'll recap it right after as well. All here on YouTube. Let us know your favorite corners, sleepers in the chat. Hit the thumbs up, hit subscribe, do all the things on the way out. And we'll see you again on Monday. 3-round mock Monday. Check the mic.